Part 2, second part of the return of the legendary Spear Knight. Remember to like, subscribe and press the bell icon. So let's start. Joshua is all set to show them his true strength and capability. He tells the Duke that he will only be using a stick, which surprises everyone. As the fight begins, Joshua strikes with his rod, and Babel is strangely confused. He goes on to fight with utmost strength, and Babel begins to cuss at him. Babel considered him weak and someone with no mana, but Joshua had shown his real strength. And also used mana, which Rebreaker believes is a high level of mana and cannot be compared to that of Babel's. As the fight gets intense, the Duke stops them and is surprised at Joshua's level of mana as well as his strength to have fought Babel with a mere stick. Everyone is shocked and confused, questioning how a concubine's son could have fought the young master Babel. The Duke orders Joshua to meet him personally, which agitates Chiffon and Babel since the Duke never really calls anyone to his room. Meanwhile, Princess Cheryl is amazed at the skills of Joshua and says, "I will make him mine," portraying how things may start to get worse. The wife of Duke Agnes, Venus Pon, asks Chiffon about the matters that happened earlier. Chiffon tells her everything he sees. He also tells her how Babel lost to Joshua, which angers her so much that she smacks Chiffon. She can't seem to accept the fact that Joshua is a mana user. Chiffon says that the Duke might take him to the capital, where he'll keep an eye on him. Chiffon believes that the Duke will announce to the people that Joshua uses rank C magic, and he might as well make him duel against the members of the Royal Knights. This makes Vanessa happy, as she will now use her conspiracies to make sure Joshua doesn't win. Meanwhile, Joshua comes to meet the Duke and questions him about who he really is, to which Joshua responds that he's the same young man he's always known. The Duke asks him if he's ever held grudges against him for overlooking him all these years, and Joshua says there's nothing like that. Joshua says he's very confident that the Duke will take him to the capital, mainly because he now considers Joshua the next successor and also to prevent any family brawls. Joshua tells the Duke that he will only be using a spear for all the training, which surprises the Duke. Joshua is confident that he will even be able to fight the 9 stars with the spear he possesses. Duke Agnes is one of the 9 stars and says he himself will be testing Joshua out. If he wins, his request to use the spear will be accepted, and if not, he will have to go to the academy for training. Vanessa has gone to meet her uncle, whom she believes would be of help in defeating Joshua and getting rid of him. She is all set to remove Joshua from her son's path. Joshua is at the castle and encounters Babel, who offers to fight him once again. Joshua asks if he's confident enough, and Babel, with his passion and desire to defeat Joshua, says he's all set to fight him. At the Great Imperial Palace, Marcus van Britten had been informed of all the recent details regarding Joshua. Britten is unaware of the fact that Joshua is the Duke's illegitimate child, and once told, he admits he's envious. The man also updates him on the rumors spreading about Joshua defeating Babel, and upon hearing that Britten is shocked as a 9-year-old made the greatest talent of the Empire fall to his knees. Britten says that it's a blessing for the Empire to possess a child so strong and courageous. Britten says he can't go because of the wild dogs, with their eyes wide open waiting for some sort of opportunity. He orders an Imperial Prince to be sent to the mansion to confirm Joshua's skills. Meanwhile, Joshua and Babel are caught in a fight again as Babel can't seem to accept defeat. Babel realizes Joshua has way too much power and strength and will be very hard to defeat. An aura explosion takes place, throwing Babel to the ground defeated. Joshua warns him to stay away from him and his mother. At the Agnes Dukedom, Joshua is in bed, tired and exhausted. He says he used too much mana without resting. Someone is at the door, and as Joshua gets up to open the door, he meets Cheryl. Cheryl introduces herself and asks him to call at noon if he wants. She doesn't hesitate to enter, but is stopped by Joshua. Joshua shuns her and asks her to buzz off. At the Duke Agnes training hall, all the centurions have gathered and are apparently going to be trained by the young master Joshua. 2 of the knights ask Rolls where his friends Gordon Lloyd are, but they receive no response. Joshua asks all the men to attack him, which surprises everyone as they have already assumed that Joshua is weak and isn't capable of fighting so many men at once. Joshua asks Rolls to do the same, but as he refuses, Joshua threatens him, telling him he'd do to him what he did to the other 2 knights. Rolls falls to the ground, asking for another chance. Joshua asks him to draw out his blade, and if he does win against him, he'll forget anything that ever happened. As Rolls attacks Joshua, he uses mana power to fight back, making Rolls fall to the ground. Joshua wants the knights to not judge anyone's skills based on their appearance. All the centurions kneel down to show they admit and accept that Joshua possesses some incredible skills, regardless of his age. Meanwhile, Cyril is in her room, disappointed and sorrowful as she is shunned by Joshua. The Duke calls Joshua and asks why he had punished the centurions, and Joshua says he wanted them to know he has the same blood as the Duke just so they don't bother him and his mother again. The Duke is amazed at his extraordinary qualities and says he would have done the same or worse. The Duke asks Joshua to prepare since they have to leave to judge Joshua's mana. Meanwhile, the knights are talking amongst themselves, and one of the knights tells Chiffon that he's scared he might lose his place because his position is at stake. The Royal Knight Order is about to arrive, and as it does, Joshua catches a glimpse of the fourth prince, Kaiser van Britten, someone who played a significant role in his previous life. Joker, the 1st Imperial Battalion Knight Order captain, is involved in a fight with the newbies who have joined the battalion. He believes they are new and need to stop pretending to be knights with the little mana they have. A man enters and tells Joker that there's a mission from Vanessa Nim, and she has asked Joker to look after it. The mission is to make sure Joshua never gets to wield a sword again. Joshua encounters Kaiser and is full of wrath, remembering all that had happened in his previous life. The knight asks Joshua to be respectful towards Prince Kaiser, which annoys Joshua, and he says that there can't be two suns under the same sky in the Empire. He continues by saying that the only person who deserves respect is the Emperor. Kaiser Van says he, too, won't respect someone with an uncertain identity like Joshua. The 9th Imperial Battalion Vice Captain, Balmong Don, shows up with his knights and approaches Joshua. He degrades Joshua and calls him the illegitimate child, who is probably insane. Joshua's knight takes out his sword to protect his master and is bashed by Balmong for defending a lowly illegitimate son. The knight defends him, saying that Joshua is part of Duke Agnes' family and must be respected. One of the 9 stars, Duke von Agnes, shows up and asks Joshua to apologize for acting rashly towards the prince, but Van Britten, with his manipulative nature and convincing manner, says that it is all right and that Joshua needs to show that he really is a knight and doesn't just talk without action. Joshua is aware of Van Britten's crafty methods. Joker asks Van Britten if he can fight Joshua and also identify if Joshua really possesses mana. On the training ground, Joshua and Joker confront each other, all set to show their abilities. Joker laughs at Joshua for carrying a stick, which he believes would be of no help. As Joker attacks Joshua, he feels a heavy pressure that pushes him backward. It is obvious that Joshua is winning with all the techniques he uses. Joker feels defeated already and knows that if he doesn't defeat Joshua, he will have to be answerable to Vanessa. The knights are concerned because the Joker's magic went beyond B grade and Joshua may be in danger. Balmong asks Joker to stop as it gets too problematic. Joker, with his B grade mana, is pushed back and thrown to the ground, which shocks him. He's bewildered as to how he gets defeated even with B grade mana. Joshua finds it hard to fight Joker with the B grade mana he's using. Joshua has no other option but to activate Lugia. The knights observe that Joshua has used an artifact, which is a weapon that contains magic. Van Britten asks Balmong to stop the fight since he has already figured out that Joshua's skills are very impressive. Joshua is appreciated for his skills and is appointed as AC rank knight. Joshua's resentment towards the prince and the knights is shown through his words, as he says, "I'll make sure everyone here suffers." Joshua is handed a sword with the title of the youngest mana user. The Agnes family gathers for a regular meeting. The Duke asks them to report anything they have noticed lately. Count Arnold says that the knights who left for the expedition have returned because of black ogres, one of the strongest monsters in the Black Forest. Everyone's scared as to how anyone would be capable of fighting the monsters. The Duke asks if there are more issues, and Chiffon says he has an unresolved matter. Chiffon says that Joshua's skills and abilities are somewhat hard to believe and that no one can easily wrap their heads around what they saw earlier. He expresses his concern that Joshua might be borrowing the powers of an outer source, which may endanger the future. He mentions the weapon Joshua was using, a spear that had some extraordinary magical powers in it. Everyone seems to now be skeptical about Joshua's abilities. Joshua enters the room, and as he passes by Chiffon, he challenges him to cross blades with him since he's the one who's very dubious about Joshua's skills. Chiffon is triggered and starts shouting at Joshua, which agitates the Duke, and he asks them to stop. The Duke tells Chiffon that Joshua's skills have been observed by the magician Evergrant of the Royal Knight Order, and if there was anything suspicious, the Royal Knight would have noticed it. The Duke further says that there are things that he still needs to confirm, so in order to figure out Joshua's abilities, he will have to take him to the Forest of Dark Beings. The knights show their concern towards the Duke sending Joshua to the forest, as they think it may not be safe. The Duke says that once the forest is cleared, he'll be admitting Joshua to the Imperial Academy in the capital. Chiffon is concerned because if the Duke sends Joshua to the academy, they won't be able to harm him in any way, and if his skills get more polished, there are chances of Babel being pushed back from the air competition. Joshua requests that the Duke let his mother Lucia go along with him, which Chiffon says isn't right, but the Duke agrees and allows Joshua to take her along. As the Duke finishes the meeting, Babel shows up and pays his respects to the Duke. Chiffon is triggered that Joshua doesn't show respect to Babel. The Duke asks why he has shown up so late, and Babel says that he would officially want to renounce the official heir seat of the Agnes family. Everyone's extremely surprised, including Chiffon, who had been finding ways to get rid of Joshua so that Babel could get the title of the next heir. The Duke is happy with the change and finds it a positive one. Meanwhile, Duchess Vanessa is concerned about Babel and says that he's very stubborn and won't change his mind. She's aware of all the previous events and asks Chiffon about Joshua's plans. He notifies her with all the details, and she decides to have a private meeting with Lucia before they depart for the capital. The knights are preparing to depart, and as they do so, Joshua remembers that the Duke has given him a gift called the Don Ring, which is an artifact that allows the user to don an armor as soon as mana is injected into the ring. He asks Joshua to change his identity while he's in the jungle. Joshua is glad to see the position he has acquired in such a short period of time. The Duke asks Joshua if he resents him, to which Joshua reminisces about how in the next 10 years the Duke will meet his unexpected end in the Civil War, but he seems to have formed a connection with him by now. Kaiser Van Britten shows up and, with his manipulative words, tells Joshua that he will assist and protect him and give him the benefit of entering the Knight Order without taking the Imperial Knight test. Joshua is annoyed, knowing how manipulative and vile Kaiser is. They depart with only one Knight Order, the 4th-class magician, Armon, and 100 others, including Joshua and Babel. They reach the castle on the loch, adjacent to the Forest of Dark Beings. As they approach the castle, the Viscount, Beeg, who is also Vanessa's relative, and Anna, his daughter, show up to welcome the Duke. Beeg asks about Joshua, and Chiffon says that he's the illegitimate son of the Duke, and Beeg seems to despise Joshua already. The Duke asks for them to finish the introduction and get to work. Beeg, however, asks them to first rest and then begin their task, but the Duke says his men aren't weak and don't really need any rest. Beeg says he'll join them even though his efforts may be of no use. The Duke tells Beeg not to come since Anna would be home alone, which is not safe. Beeg says that Anna possesses the extraordinary quality of spirit magic and would be a great help if taken along for the task. Joshua is amused by Anna's skills and thinks she has a familiar face. Meanwhile, at the Avalon Empire, the Emperor is discussing the previous events with one of his strongest knights. He's amazed by the extraordinary and incredible qualities of Joshua. He asks his knight, Evergrant, for an opinion about Joshua and how much potential he has. The knight says there was something different about Joshua, and fighting him would be somewhat of a big deal. He gets notified with all the details of the conversation between Kaiser and Joshua. Evergrant asks if they can keep Joshua in the palace for a short period of time, and the knight responds that they will do so as Kaiser has already planned it. Joshua, however, is in the forest fighting the monsters and seems to have been intimidated by them. The knights are setting up their camps for the night as the Duke tells them that the monsters will show up, especially during the red moon, and become several times more aggressive. The period between the monsters coming down to the town has become shorter and is harming the citizens. The Duke says they won't approach them first. He then sends them all to set up the camps. While they are collecting materials for the camps, Joshua asks the men to go back since he'll take some time collecting more materials. Just as they go, Joshua goes inside the forest with his spear, saying, "This is my only chance." Beeg is caught stalking him from behind the trees. There are things that were born out of the power of the primordial, just as there are elements in magic. The ancient magicians called them primordial stones. Only 5 primordial stones have shown themselves to the world. It is a godly object that the magicians and knights desire. Joshua is in search of the primordial stone in the middle of the forest, since that is the only thing that can keep his power from going berserk. Just as he goes further, a black ogre shows up. He plans on attacking it from behind by striking his neck. As he does so, the ogre seems too hard for him to defeat, which is why he must hide himself. He finds a place to hide, and after hiding, he uses the technique of the Assassin King, which manipulates the mana, enveloping his entire body in it. It makes one forget about the surroundings. The ogre passes by him without feeling his presence. Joshua runs further into the middle of the forest in search of the primordial stone, but falls to the ground again and is attacked by multiple ogres. He uses one of his techniques to get rid of them. Joshua tries to get rid of them all, but he realizes that the child's body has its limit, and he hasn't yet reached the level of the second phase of magic spear arts. He realizes he needs to find the primordial stone and join his group before anyone finds out. Just as they are setting up the camps, the ogres attack them in huge numbers. The knights set out to fight and kill a few of them, but when they realized that the ogres were too many, the C-rank knight planned to retreat, but Chiffon ordered that no one should abandon the camps. They start a battle, fighting all the monstrous creatures. They strike at them with great strength, killing most of them, but they soon realize that there's no end to them as more and more start to attack them. Chiffon, considering himself a powerful B-rank knight, gets attacked and falls to the ground, asking everyone to retreat. The Duke immediately comes out of the camp and uses his extraordinary skills to finish all the creatures in one go. He manages to kill them all, surprising almost everyone with the strength and power he possesses as one of the 9 stars. Joshua manages to get rid of almost all the ogres, and as he goes further, he sees an immensely hollow hole in the ground, and as he stands at the side of the cliff, he says, "Bronto." While everyone is discussing the Duke's extraordinary qualities, the knights realize that Joshua is missing and has probably abandoned them in fear of fighting the ogres. They start questioning his abilities because they believe he got intimidated by the black ogres and left already. The Duke shouts, saying the fight isn't over yet and that they should stay focused. While they are fighting, Joshua appears and strikes at 2 of the black ogres, killing them. Joshua is able to use a portion of Bronto's power, but is unaware of how long his body would hold out with this technique. Everyone lauds him for it and is surprised at his C-rank skills. More black ogres attack him, and he asks the knights to back off as he will fight them all alone. As he does so, the knights seem surprised by his qualities. The Duke is somewhat aware that Joshua is barely holding on to his conscience because he doesn't want to show any weakness. The knight says that Joshua is capable of being the 3rd-class master, as he possesses qualities of a qualified magician that are only found in a few people. Just as the ogre attacks, Joshua reaches his limit and falls to the ground. The Duke manages to protect and save Joshua from the attacks. Joshua finds himself in the dukedom, which has caught fire, and the building seems to collapse. He finds Babel fighting to protect the dukedom, threatening anybody who tries to destroy it. He feels a force of wind coming towards him, and as he sees clearly, it is Annabella Grace. He then starts to connect the dots, as he earlier felt that he knew Anna. There is a connection or an earlier event that has clearly happened related to Anna that Joshua tries to remember, but can't. He sees himself 10 years prior to the events and sees the dukedom being wiped out and destroyed. As he opens his eyes and shouts, "Draxia Bell Grace," he realizes he was dreaming all this time and says that prophetic dreams are all because of Bronto. He ponders over how to bring out the power of magic spear arts against monsters, and he probably needs to be somewhere around a starting B-rank knight. The prophetic dream is another power that Bronto holds. He is still intrigued to find out more about the primordial stone. As Joshua moves out of bed, he realizes the Duke is sitting right next to him as he looks at the moon and expresses how it has changed color in such a short time. The Duke explains to Joshua how he'll now be changing his identity. And Joshua agrees, as his main priority now is to get back his previous life's strength. The Duke was intrigued by Joshua's mentioning the cursed name of Draxia Bell Grace. The Duke wonders how Joshua knows the cursed name of Draxia Belle Grace. He told Joshua to go to sleep, as they'd return to the estate first thing in the morning. In the secret room in Lock Castle, Chiffon and Beeg are discussing how Joshua is a threat to Babel's position and that if Vanessa doesn't do anything about it, the adversities may increase. Chiffon says that Joshua was just a child who ran errands in the stables. No one could have guessed that he had such an amazing talent hidden away. Beeg can't wrap his head around the fact that Joshua possesses the qualities of a C-rank knight. And he assumes Joshua has made a contract with the high-ranking demon. Chiffon goes on to say that the Imperial Knight Order and the Duke carefully watched Joshua before giving him the title, so there's no way that anything he has is demonic. Beeg says he'll keep an eye on Joshua in case he's involved in anything vile. Anna, Beeg's daughter, will also be going to the Imperial Academy, so it will be easy to get information from her. Cox tells Cyril at the Agnes estate that Joshua is coming back after the subjugation is done. In the Forest of Dark Beings, there will be a big feast. Cyril seems unhappy, and she asks Cox why he's excited for Joshua to come when he initially hated him. Cox seems to be convinced of Joshua's skills and abilities. Cyril is aware that the Duke of Pontius has sent her to connect with Babel because of a mercenary king. The mercenary king is mostly one of the 12 superhumans who can compete for the absolute seat of 9 stars. He secretly joined forces with Marquis Cromwell, who comes after Duke Pontia in wealth. Things have gotten acute between the two families, Cromwell's and Pontia, as a territorial war may break out between the two. The Duke has decided to get Babel married to his daughter so he can get Duke Agnes aid in the upcoming battle. Cox believes Cyril is being sacrificed, but the Pontia has no other way to avoid this emergency. Cox asks Cyril to have a conversation with Lord Joshua at least once, and Cyril, amused by the idea, asks Cox to arrange a meal between her and Joshua before he departs. The grand feast at Agnes State begins, and the voices in the air are praising Joshua and his incredible skills. Everyone is impressed by the 10-year-old's achievement of killing the Black Ogres. Joshua enters with his subordinate knight and says he's too exhausted to attend. The man informs him that his mother Lucia will also be attending Vanessa's feast. Attending? Joshua is somewhat surprised but curious about why Vanessa would be so kind as to arrange him a feast. Joshua goes to the place where Vanessa has set up a feast for him and his mother. Vanessa welcomes Joshua and informs him that this is their first meeting. Chiffon asks Joshua aggressively to pay respect to the Duchess, but Joshua, being stubborn, doesn't. Upon his mother's request, he greets Vanessa. Vanessa thinks to herself how she will no longer be seeing him anymore, and this is clearly the first and last time they've met. Joshua's mom, Lucia, doesn't seem to know that he has become a knight and is going to the academy. As she finds out through Chiffon, she seems more than happy and proud of her son. Vanessa says she prepared the dinner as a means of congratulating him on becoming a knight. She apologizes to Lucia for overlooking her all this time and ill-treating her. Vanessa seems to have put up a facade and pretends to be generous to Joshua and Lucia. She asks for dinner to be served. She tells them to be comfortable, and also that the dinner has been arranged with the intention of growing closer to both of them from the core of her heart. Lucia is about to eat, but Joshua stops her and says he needs to first introduce himself. He does so and then asks the men to serve dinner to Vanessa first since she's been too kind to them. Joshua is suspicious that the food being served might contain poison. He asks Vanessa to start, and she responds by saying she has put on too much weight and is picky when it comes to food. Chiffon shouts, saying it's disrespectful for him to be accusing the Duchess of mixing poison in their food. Chiffon pulls out his sword, which triggers Joshua, and he pulls his spear out in return. Joshua is very angry because he knows the food is poisonous, and Chiffon threatens to kill him for being rude to Vanessa. While Joshua and Chiffon are engaged in a fight, the Duke shows up. He stops them and asks them why they've been acting so aggressively. The Duke asks both Joshua and Lucia to go rest since they'll be leaving the next morning. As they leave, the Duke questions Vanessa about her sudden generosity. The Duke is well aware of Vanessa's intentions and that she is envious of why Joshua gets all the attention. Vanessa is full of rage as she expresses how she didn't marry the Duke because she loved him, but mainly because it was an arranged marriage. She does not want her son to be victimized, and she requests that the Duke exercise basic courtesy. The Duke warns her and tells her that he's been aware of all that she's up to. Meanwhile, Joshua updates his mother on everything that has happened. Cain shows us and makes us glad that Joshua is going to the castle. He'll get to learn a lot. Cain asks Joshua for a favor, allowing him to serve as Joshua's liege. Joshua tells Cain that the path he has chosen is bloody and full of criticism. Cain, without thinking twice, accepts that he's all set to fight for and with Joshua from now on. The next morning they plan to leave, and as they do so, Cheryl shows up. She says she wants to greet them before they depart. The Duke asks if she wants to join them in the Arcady. She refuses and explains that she has promised to visit Cox's family. She then approaches Joshua and gives him something, saying, "It is the symbol of our family," and requests that he visit her family in Arcady. Cox is enraged at Cheryl for giving the symbol, as it is of great importance and can't just be given to anyone. Caesar has gotten a letter from Joshua about the offer for him to join the imperial palace. When he opens the letter, he laughs hysterically, which means there's something the Caesar didn't expect. As she gives him the symbol, all the knights start murmuring amongst themselves about Cheryl being interested in Babel first and now Joshua. Joshua can't seem to turn her down, as it would ruin his reputation as being generous. He takes the symbol from her, and the Duke orders them to depart. At the Great Caltica Palace, the Emperor is enraged that Joshua rejected his request to join the imperial palace. Joshua says in his letter that he wants to follow his emperor and the laws of his empire. The emperor seems to have been looking forward to Joshua's making it to the imperial knight order with his own strength. They reach the Agnes family's private mansion in Arcady. Cain thinks nothing has changed about the place since he spent his entire childhood there. The mansion was a place that Cain described as serene, where they could train in peace without anyone's judgment. Joshua says he wants to leave for a while and asks Cain to look after his mother. Joshua goes to the capital Arcady's downtown area and, as he encounters him, tells him that he has come to find a red coin buried deep in the rough river. Joshua believes he's come to the right place, and he just needs an informant who will retrace the past events for him. The man takes him to the place, which seems very low-key. Nobody questions him or gives him bizarre looks. They take him through 3 doors and eventually take him to a room and ask him about what information he requires. The man is surprised to have found that Joshua is already aware of his occupation. Joshua is surprised that the man knows his identity, even though the Duke managed to hide it all these years. From Joshua's expressions, the man realizes that he's confused about how everyone's aware of his identity. But he assures him that nobody except a few men of the place are aware. The man offers to provide Joshua with first-class information, and Joshua knows he might ask for something in return for providing him with such valuable information. Joshua asks where the heirloom of the Orvis Count family, which was wiped out several years ago, is. The man says that most of their assets have been sold on the black market, but he'll need some time to find out for sure. Joshua continues by saying that just as the person who finds the red coin buried somewhere in the Ralph River receives a blessing from the moon, the person who brings the symbol will also receive the moon door. Joshua says that if he accepts his conditions, he will find the symbol in 3 years. Joshua's intelligence amuses the man, who says that he will first listen to the conditions before making a decision. Joshua goes on to say that his first condition is that his information should not be leaked to anyone. Second, he'd want to know about Draxia Bel Grace, who is apparently the war god. He then asks if he's worth investing in. 2 months have passed since Joshua last talked to the moon door. He has been training ever since he arrived and has also managed to send Lucia to the other state that the Duke owns. While Joshua is at the dinner table with Cain, the informant shows up after 2 months. He hands down a roll of paper to Joshua, saying it has passed through several hands. The heirloom for them isn't a big deal, which is why they won't charge a commission as well. The man leaves, saying he'll take the commission fee all at once in the end. Joshua is suspicious of why the man is being so generous to him. Joshua learns that the Orvis Count family was once a renowned magician family on par with the Rebecca family in the Avalon Empire. Long ago, the Orvis family members were the only ones not treated with contempt because they were magicians of Avalon. The head of the Orvis family defeated knights who were on the verge of master rank. The incident didn't receive much reaction from the country of Knight Avalon, but it did from the kingdom of Magic Terror. Several decades later, the family fell into ruin in an instant at the hands of their own country's imperial family. Joshua mentions the Baram accent, And Cain says he knows him as he is famous in the underworld and is also the brother of Viscount Beeg. Immediately after the Count, Rebreaker shows up along with his daughter. Soon after, we are shifted to a scene where Baron Pavolum is seen meeting the young Lord Veren Scheinvillas. The young lord says that the deadline for our promise has already passed. Baron Pavolum tells Veren that elves are hard to find, and he'll need some time for it. Veren seems mad at him for not doing what is asked and gives him more time. Veren is the son of Marquis Villas, an influential figure in the military. Veren seems to be a smart and cunning man who knows how to handle crowds and deal with people like Baron. He makes sure he's intimidating towards him so that Baron stays loyal to him. Meanwhile, Joshua and Cain meet Count Rebecca. And counting Rebreaker, he seems to be a man who talks in the most formal manner to almost everyone. While Joshua looks at Poncel Jin Rebreaker, he realizes what an ignoble lady she is. She steps forward to greet him and Joshua, so surprised at how talkative she had gotten. Immediately after Veren shows up with his subordinate, after looking at Poncel Jin, he is amused by her beauty and asks where she's from. Poncel Jin seems to be taken aback by his statement and doesn't respond, which makes Veren feel insulted. It is obvious that Veren is a man who boasts his family's name but is really of no use. Joshua stops him from insulting Poncel and, as the Duke had told him earlier, says that his name is Ven Frederick. At the Lock Castle, Beeg and his daughter Anna are sitting at the table with a man covered from head to toe and looking mysterious. She informs him of Joshua and his monstrous skills. The man is triggered and asks why he hadn't known any of this earlier. Anna tells the man that she has a plan and that she'll be joining the academy soon. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, Veren asks Joshua who his family really is, and Joshua says it's none of his business. Veren asks Joshua to kneel down and apologize, but Joshua refuses. Veren's subordinate knight attacks Joshua, but Joshua defeats the B-rank knight with a single blow. Veren is shocked that a 10-year-old is able to use mana and defeat a strong knight. He asks Joshua for his real identity again, and Joshua strikes at him using only his fist, making him fall to the ground. The knight asks him to stop and let him go, but Joshua is enraged and doesn't let go of Veren. Joshua takes off Veren's ring and tells the knight to come to the castle and get it from him if he really wants it back. If not, he'd sell it to the black market. Joshua leaves with Cain, and Iselin follows. Veren and Mucka reach the castle, and Veren is enraged at the way he was treated at the restaurant by Joshua, whom he believes is Ven Frederick. He asks Mucka to find out about his family, and he'll make sure he kills everyone related to Joshua because of the way he was humiliated. Mucka says there is no justification for the incident, and nobody would believe it if they said they were knocked down by a 10-year-old boy. Veren is full of wrath and wants to find a way to kill everyone who was present at the moment of the incident, even the Rebreakers. Mucka informs Veren of the family token that Joshua took after he knocked down Veren. Mucka says they'll first send a substitute to get the token from Joshua, and based on how Joshua reacts, they'll take their next step. Joshua is in the restaurant, aware of Veren's plans, and knows that he'll send a substitute now. Cain, however, is observing Joshua closely and realizes that everything Joshua does has always been his plan, and he'll be surpassing all expectations. Lady Iselin thanks Joshua for helping her, as if he hadn't helped her, things could have gotten worse. Joshua says he'll ask her for a favor in the future in return for what he did for her, and she agrees. Baron Accent Pravalum has come as a stand-in to say sorry and return the Villa family's token. Joshua asks him to get Veren the next time he comes, or else the token will be melted. Baron is agitated and says he'll get Mucka instead. Joshua agrees and, in return, asks for Baron's rings that he's wearing. Here is the end of the video, thanks for watching.